small group of men called Mary's Warriors. The central group is in Poland. The movement started in Poland. There's around 2,000 of us in the world, like 250 groups, I think. And yeah, I'm the first one here in Herzegovina, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we are a group devoted to Our Lady, Mary, and everything we do, everything we speak, everything we do is devoted to her. Everything we want to do, everything we want to say, we try to be in communication with Our Lady. That's it about that. Today's subject is faith and freedom. And if you don't know, English is not my first language, and this is my first time speaking in front of an English audience, so please be patient. When Rebecca told me the subject is going to be faith and freedom, the first thing that came to my mind is my Croatian people here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Croatian people in general. Through the centuries, we were oppressed. We were under a foreign rule. The longest period of time, for 400 years, we were under Ottoman Empire, under an Islamic rule. So there was a lot of suffering. There was a lot of different taxes, blood tax, when the Turks would come and take your children to be janissaries in their armies. And there was a right of first marriage night. There was tax on air, there was tax on water, there was tax on land, there was tax on everything. And people were not free. Free in the meaning of they didn't have their own country, they didn't have their own leader, but they could never, ever take their faith away. Faith endured Ottomans, faith endured Austrians, faith endured communists. Faith endured everything. They could never, not any regime in the world could take away their faith, the faith state. So, but times have changed. Freedom came, like kind of freedom, especially here for Croatians in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It came, and enemy in the past, we can see it, we can point a finger at it, we knew who the enemy was. But now, enemy is inside. Enemy is actually, I would say, he's coming from within. You know, we were poor. We were always poor, and we always needed to rely on God's providence. We needed to rely on the rain. As you can see, it's very hot here, and everything you plant here can be dead really soon if it doesn't rain, because we don't have rivers here. We don't have any water here. It's like a desert, but like green desert. So yeah, and you need to rely on God's providence. And when you rely on God's providence, and God actually gives, God sends rain, and God gives you help, and people relied on God for so many things, and created such a wonderful connections and relationships with God. But now everything came. You know, people have money, people have power, people have influence, people can travel, people can do anything, and they became their own little gods. In that sense, I see in my people, in my country, that people are starting little bit by little lose their faith. They are running away from God, but running to money. That's my vision and opinion, but all is not lost. There is still hope. When Rebecca invited me to coffee, there was me, Slaven, and Rebecca discussing about this event, what's going to be the subject and everything. Slaven told me he knew my late uncle. My late uncle he died when I was still in my mother's womb. We don't speak about my uncle in my family because he died in a war for Croatian independence, and it was very I always wanted to know something about my uncle because there's not a lot of information. And Slaven started talking about my uncle. My uncle came to his house. He was a boxer, and he showed him some moves and some stuff like that. And I was moved. And I started thinking after that to coffee. And I used to always think about him. And I started thinking, why did he fight? For what? Why did he fight? He didn't fight only for political freedom of his people. He fought for religious freedom of his people because we were under a communist rule. You could not go to mass if you wanted to. If you go to mass, you don't have a job. If you go to mass, you don't have money to feed your wives and children. So people who went to mass and people who stood up to communism were treated very badly. You know, if my uncle didn't fought, we would not sit here. You would not be here. Maybe we could sit here for 2 minutes, but then some other guy would come, and it would get very bad in very short a period of time. So I sense a great feeling of pride. I sensed very great feeling of honor to be called. I was called by him. My mother gave me name Josip after him. She was the one. Imagine that you hear that your mother went to recognize him, but she could not recognize him, and she's a dentist. So she went home and took his dental records, and by those dental records, she recognized him. They recognized him. So imagine what happened to a man and what they did to a man if her own older sister could not recognize him. So when I was thinking about that, I thought, why did they fight? Why did my dad fight? Why did my other uncles fight? They fight so we can sit here, so we can have this event, we can have discussions, we can walk freely and talk freely, and I'm very proud of that. Perhaps you're now thinking, why are you speaking about some Croatian war, some Croatian stuff to a bunch of Americans and Westerners? What does that have to do with us? Like nothing. But it has a great deal to do with you, and you can implement it in your lives. I can say you are 5 steps ahead of us. I think you had your wars, you had your fights, but it was a longer time ago. I think a lot of young people forgot, or nobody even ever told them about heroic deeds of your ancestors that died for your religion, your country. I think that you, like Lennon said, like you forgot about your elders, you put them in the nursing homes, but elders should be with their grandchildren. Elders should sit with their grandchildren and speak with them and put in their souls and in their minds stories about the heroic deeds their ancestors did, that they have in their blood the blood of martyrs and Christians who gave their lives to this, to our faith, to preserve our faith. Every one of us, every Christian, every Catholic has in them at least one relative that died because of their religion. So I think that we should go back. We should don't put your elders in the nursing homes. Be with them, speak with them. Older people should speak with their grandchildren. Sorry. So when I think about when somebody asks me, so what's the answer? How can we do better? How can we be better? Well, I can only say what I do. I can only say what made me a better person, different person. I do everything with Mary. I do everything for her. I do everything for everything. She is my model. She is my way to Christ. That's the best and the safest and fastest way to come to Christ. So one thing that also came to my mind during preparation for this event, the sad event that happened a few days ago, when Polish guy burned the altar and desecrated the statues of Our Lady. You could, I don't know if you saw, but everything was cleaned, everything was back to its normal in like 10 hours after that incident. So that's kind of what we do. That's what Christians should do. He didn't disturb us. He didn't disturb our faith. We remained faithful. We even remained more faithful when we saw that. He only action that he did, only reaction, it's going to be probably him in prison. He didn't do anything significant. That's also with everybody else before him that's wanted to destroy faith. They only destroyed statues, they only destroyed altars, they only destroyed human flesh. They never destroyed anybody's soul. That's freedom. That you can never take somebody's soul. That's yours. That's the core of your freedom. And they say the biggest statue, biggest monument of human freedom is hell. We can only decide to go there. We can only, with our deeds, decide to go there. Nobody can force us to go there. So, with that, I would leave you with our very common way of saying goodbye and hello. It's praise be Jesus and Mary, and the answer that somebody else gives in our houses, in our custom, is forever. When somebody says praise be Jesus and Mary, you enter the house, you say, person inside says forever. So if you want to bring something to your homes, to your customs from here, I would highly advise that. Thank you very much.